Thank you, David. One of the poets that we have to publish is David Borrett. I thought I'd point that out. And it's one of my favourite collections, I think, of ours. And I just want to say it's great to be reading with Carrie and Anita, and very glad to be asked to be here. I thought I'd start with a complaint, though no, it's nothing you could do. Instead of going to work, this is my life. I realise I've got to this age, and what I've done is this. Instead of going to work, I read a book. I wasn't ill or particularly tired. There was nothing at work I wanted to avoid. It wasn't the sort of book you stay off work to read. But even so, I didn't go to work. Instead, I mowed the lawn. It was too damp. Then I sat with a cup of tea and went on with the sort of book you put down and never finish. I did the kitchen window as if that was work, then opened some soup for lunch with the radio I didn't listen to, and thought of a drive or a walk, the museum, but instead I ironed a shirt and pottered round on the piano as if that was work, and had the house to myself, talking to the cat and listening to the rain, a real downpour, and trying not to feel I should be doing more with the day than the nothing I did instead of going to work. The reason I'm a poet is I had, well, there are two teachers that are important to me. Some people know me. Stanley Cook, the Sheffield poet. Stanley Cook is the most important person really, but I wouldn't have got round to writing poetry and going. I like to boast. It is a boast. I think it's very common now. I'm part of that generation that benefited from money being put into education and being moved on out of, the poorer you came from, the more money you got, it seemed. Because I wasn't at all outstanding, it comes as a surprise to you. And, but I still got one grant after another to keep doing things, And one of the reasons was this English teacher. So I'm going to read a poem called Comprehensive, and I've not gone, well I have gone mad, but this is not an expression of it. But I'm going to read some of the bits twice. Comprehensive. You stand at the blackboard, which is all there was then, chalk on your jacket and in your unruly hair. In a metal frame window, an all-weather pitch, and playing fields far as the pit head, and a Norman church scaled small to touch. Also the full moon in broad day, that any one of us, the great deprived, might walk on in the age of social welfare. You stand at the blackboard, which is all there was then, chalk on your jacket and in your unruly hair. In a metal frame, an all-weather pitch, and playing fields far as the pit head, and a Norman church scaled small to touch. Also the full moon in broad day, that any one of us, the great deprived, might walk on in the age of social welfare. Through Ashwoods that gave the town its name, a path wound in snowy Hardwick Hall or its grounds. And though the woods were empty, there you were, a mow, a mass, and at your heels the geese that saved an empire, and tie-dye, and books, the endless opportunity of words. It was a step, the 1944 Education Act, and it brought us somewhere for a while, assembled a psalm, and he who would valiant be. Decades later, the moon further than ever, I wake in sweat from our day together at the coast. It was the hottest summer. I was old enough to know. It made you human. Even now I wake and you're 10 years dead. We park on the promenade, two people in the late afternoon. Sun and moon in the same sky. We walk on the beach, the day behind us and the clear-eyed night ahead. Sand in our shoes and our shoes in our hands. we walk fully clothed into the sea. Decades later, the moon further than ever, I wake in sweat from our day together at the coast. It was the hottest summer I was old enough to know. It made you human. Even now I wake and you're 10 years dead. We park on the promenade, 2 people in the late afternoon. Sun and moon in the same sky. We walk on the beach, the day behind us and the clear-eyed night ahead. Sand in our shoes and our shoes in our hands. We walk fully clothed into the sea. I'm going to, I know a lot of you knew Linda Chase, and it seems a bit of a nerve for me to read a poem of hers, but I'm going to. Linda was important to a lot of people here. She started this, didn't she? Poets and Players. And also, the northern, the important part of the poetry school. And I remembered when she asked me how to come in, when it was starting, if we'd do some courses. And she sent me a note saying, oh, and by the way, there is photocopying on Kind Street, which seemed to me a really, typical Freudian typo, because it's King Street. But Kind Street was exactly who she was, wasn't it? But she's got ambition and energy and so on, hasn't she? When the year that she died, she got in touch with me to say Michael Smith was very important, was very important to her, and obviously has been very important to me. But he said, Linda, I'm a bit pushed. He didn't know how ill she was, so she asked me if I'd edit her last book, and it occurred to me that, because she said, I want to pay you for doing it, and I thought it was really because she thought I hadn't got any money. She wanted to give me some money to do what I'd enjoy doing. I didn't take any money, of course. Anyway, we also published her first pamphlet in 1994, which was called Young Men Dancing. I'm going to read this poem, even though it's in her voice, and it's, those people who knew Linda will realise it's a bit racy. So you won't be able to distinguish me from her. See. Who were those young men dancing? And why were they dancing with you? And what was the meaning of all that business around the area of the pelvis? Both pelvises, I mean, since I saw you with 2 of them, 2 men that is, with 1 pelvis each. Though there is your pelvis too to reckon with. It made quite a show of itself out there on the dance floor, not to be overlooked nor slighted in any way, sticking like a magnet to the erratic rhythms of those young men, their jeans curving and cupping and making promises in all directions of things to come. Which way to go, you must have asked yourself a dozen times at least, as the young man with the smile turned this way and the young man with the dreamy eyes turned that, and you were dazed, in circles, spinning this way and that, brushing up against them in confusion, body parts in gentle friction, sliding back and forth, nearly seeming like you hadn't meant to do it. Did you mean to do it? Could they feel your nipples harden? Thank God there was music you could hide behind and make it look like dancing. I'm wondering just how much attention young men actually pay. Linda Chase, yes. I'm talking of Forward Prize winners. Gerard Benson didn't win a Forward Prize, but he did write a poem called Boat Houses, which begins, then sometimes you'll think of boat houses, which led to a poem called Then Sometimes You'll Think of, not Windermere, Bowness. Something, so Kim, I was thinking of you. I thought I'd read this because of this. Yeah, it was Gerard Benson. It's one of my favourite poets who died 4 or 5 years ago now. Cathy Benson is still very much our younger girls' adopted grandma. Boat houses. Then sometimes you'll think of boat houses, shacks built over a cut in the riverbank, and of sculls and skiffs, and you'll think of paddles and fenders and boat hooks, of short shorts and long legs and the V, the wake spreading back over the water. And you'll think about Dr. Moore, who shopped for 10 years by rowing a tough mile upstream with all his bags. But more than these, you'll think just of the boathouses and their rugged impermanence, and the men who built them, and the peculiar idea of building a wooden shack over the water to house a shell in the slopping darkness and padlock the gate. Gerard Benson. And with any luck, if you just talk amongst yourselves for a moment, I'll not find the play that I intended to read. I might come back to it. Oh no, there it is. This is a poem called Gerard Benson. You see what I did there?
Yeah. It's a segue.
Thank you. It's not how you spell it, is it, segue?
No.
So Cathy Benson. Who knows Cathy? Does anybody know Gerard Benson?
Yes.
I just wanted somebody to say yes.
Yes!
Thank you, Rod. Among other things, he was an actor, and he was mostly known as a children's poet and as the person who masterminded the poems on the Underground. And but he also had a single. He and his band, the Barrow Poets, they had a single that was #1 in Australia. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, Gerard Benson, he was, he wasn't a young man when I first met him, but yeah. Gerard Benson, you were a good age, as Dad would say, like him, mid-80s, but still young, and still knowing your own quick and open-hearted mind, while your body closed down round you. Those last days I visited with the proofs of your memoir, from sent away to Wales, to brought nameless back, to gas masks, boy chaperone to a wayward aunt, dancing with her beau. Afterwards, cake in a Lions. Assistant stage manager, you understudied in Rep. Your triumph, a walk-on lamplighter, who stole a laugh from nothing, which turned out the story of your life. You caught the 60s full on with the thinking man's crumpet and your own show at the Royal Festival Hall. Your Barrow Poets single topped the Australian charts. Who knew when you arrived in town with your poet's mole, your poems on the Underground and your books for penguins in your natty old-fashioned hat. You strolled a furled umbrella into our northern rain and became its laureate. I loved your work, and like everybody, didn't see how good it is. Yes. There is another poem in here that I'm watching. I'm going to read 2 or 3 more poems. This is quite a long piece, and it's called Pigeons. My daughter is a teacher now, and it basically started that way that you do something when you're younger, and then we went back to this pigeon cote above Sheffield on Sky Edge, and where we'd been when she was little, and now she's a teacher, and she's and it's got my brother in it who he's got a man in it who was like my brother. They're really enthusiastic. My brother never learned to read or write, and somebody who should know better never taught him. And it's just doing anyway. Never happened. But the guy in here is very like our Joss, and it begins with an epigraph which I'm going to read twice by Stanley Cook. Sometimes to someone, pigeon fanciers, backyard mechanics, rabbit breeders, hermit chrysanthemum growers on allotments, and trumpet players in silver prize bands are, were, will be great. Sometimes to someone, pigeon fanciers, backyard mechanics, rabbit breeders, hermit chrysanthemum growers on allotments, and trumpet players in silver prize bands are, were, will be great. Stanley Cook. Who'd have thought that doves were pigeons, or nicer, the other way round? Vermin of the air, pickers up in olden times of fag-butts in precincts, scatterers of seeds and followers of ploughs, pigeons whose droppings look wreck paintwork. That one just landed up there might have borne the olive branch, I hope so, with Ararat our roof and the chimney he looks out from solid ground at last, plain sailing. Favourite is the pigeon that we saw in Pepe's cafe with the youngest that day, when her beautiful, infallible mother announced, "Look at that penguin." A family saying now, "Look at that penguin." Who'd have thought that suddenly it's this year, and here we are with the youngest, the teacher, by the pigeon cotes at Sky Edge. We stand in the sun and look, her whole childhood later, at a swirl of birds in the blue above Park Hill. Then a man who might be my brother, the one who never went to school, arrives to let us know all about them. His dark eyes glitter, seeing them again in the telling. Not the baskets and pantechnicon, but the start of the flying, when it's not racing, but homing from as far away as France. And what he wants to tell us is that moment, that spectacular moment, when they're set free in their hundreds to fill and more than fill the sky. And equally, here on this one of Sheffield's 7 hills, what he wants to tell us is him, himself, here, waiting at the far end of the journey. When there she is, his favourite, unmistakable in all that sky, whether winning or blown anxious days off course, there she suddenly is. And here he always is, guiding her down with a tin of rattling corn. Not that she needs it, she knows him too, tethered as she is by instinct, or whatever you call it, family. Look at that, he might just as well say. Look at that penguin. Now then, there's time for one more, I hope, and I've forgotten which book it's in. Oh, I want to show you this book, because I've been told by somebody, John Heckley, I think, that people are more likely to buy a book if they've seen it. And it does have an amazing cover, which it's my grandson's, but I mean I didn't have anything else to do with it. It's Carcanet's good work. Yeah, what would be really good is if I knew when this plan was. Maybe. I know, I'll end with this poem instead. Because we're all poets, aren't we? Everybody's poets. I guess we're all poets. And this is Poetry Society. I was hoping it had a double meaning, Poetry Society. I was up on the top of the Poetry Society in Betterton Street with a guy called Cliff Yates, who's one of the other poets that we published that we're very proud of, and whose new and selected poems is available from the Poetry Business website. And I was doing a project with Sarah Maguire, and we didn't know each other at all, and I was a bit in awe of her because although I'd already published a couple of books, I'd not written anything the way that she wrote poems. I'm not saying that I have now, but I think I'm better at it than I was then, if you see what I mean. And she was just great. And it's a bit of a cheek to write a poem to her after her death. I don't know what she'd think of it. Anyway, She did an anthology, didn't she? Flora Poetica. And I like the fact that anthology, you know what the word anthology means?
Yes, gathering flowers.
A gathering of flowers. Flora Poetica is what she did. Isn't that fantastic? Just chance, I suppose. No. Surely not. Anyway, Poetry Society. Sarah, half a lifetime ago I met you in a meeting at the top of Betterton Street. I remember your tank commander's watch, exactly an hour wrong. You were 1 year older and half a lifetime further on. I think we made each other frivolous, though you were serious in your art, just as I imagine in how you lived. So many spoke because of you. Except for poems, I only knew you were a gardener. Your project was nurturing also a public space, your words there in the soil, so many cuttings and changings, a sort of translation. You said translation was the opposite of war. We said our paths must cross in this small world, but I met you again only in poems, your own unmistakable, and those Latin names gathered in Flora Poetica, the real meaning of anthology. Opening it today is to step into bright shade, so many perfumes, and the promise where no day was. Though in that society there was a roof to sit out on in the sun, to talk and drink and read in the middle of London, in the middle of all those words and reputations. Your own, not least now your work outlives you, all that unbelievable short time ago. I'll read those last 8 lines again, and then at the end, you know, it's riotous applause is what we're looking for. Opening it today is to step into bright shade, so many perfumes, and the promise where no day was. Though in that society there's a roof to sit out on in the sun, to talk and drink and read in the middle of London, in the middle of all those words and reputations. Your own, not least, now your work outlives you, all that unbelievable short time ago.